Shalom, wa kal haloyim la, Allahaya nawa Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakakwadash, double honor, them Yad, as always, to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Peace, love, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect, Habayath Madawadah, the house of David, the brothers laboring day in and day out to make their calling of election sure, helping seal the elect of the nation of Israel for the return of our Lord Hamashiach Yahushai is at hand, and to the Akim and Agwath, the Akyah, Wa'agwathyah, who listen and believe on the glorious gospel of Yahweh Shem Yahushai that's being preached on the four corners of the earth. Unto you I say shalom. So shalom to the hopeful elect. This is the brother Sagalah coming back with a lesson through the Spirit. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, which is through the Rakakwadash, the Holy Spirit. We're going to jump right into it, get into geography and war. And I have the map here to show the geography, of this article that I'm going to bring out, show the area where, a lot of these chess moves, these spiritual chess moves, which are facilitating, other moves to be made each and every day, each and every week, through this process, of World War III, the wars and rumors of wars, the proxy wars, all the nations, the weak saying I am strong, nations like North Korea and Iran, etc. All of these, are chess moves, moves on the chessboard, which the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai is actually facilitating. And then that's being done, and there's countless precepts that go into that, like Proverbs 21:1, for example. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. He turneth it whithersoever he will. Daniel 4:17 tells us that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man, and he set it up over it. The basis of man, the base man is ruling is Esau Edom, when you read in Job, the 30th chapter, amongst other precepts. So, this is the geography and the war. So, as I jump into this, we see here on the map, we see Russia, and then we see Finland and Sweden. Finland in the green and Sweden here in pink. And these nations have been the cause of more activity that's causing Russia to go up into the Arctic, to continue to build, different bases and to reopen bases, for years that wasn't used. And so this is the area here in the Arctic. So there's a lot of activity, and I got an article that's going to touch on that I'm going to get into here, which I'll pull it up here on the screen. And Lord willing, this lesson's edifying to the hopeful elect. So it says Russia's military moves in the Arctic. It says worry the U.S. and NATO. So it's Russia's movement up in the Arctic is worrying the U.S. and NATO, which the U.S. we know is Babylon the Great, and NATO is the beast system, right? NATO is the beast system in the EU. Now it says in late May, Russian ambassador at large Nikolai Korchinov, it says, informed state media that the situation in the Arctic was becoming perilous. He wasn't referring to melting polar ice due to climate change. Instead, he warned of a very disturbing trend that is turning the Arctic into an international area of military operations, and blamed NATO for expanding its footprint in the region. That's a typical Russian play, retired Finnish Major General Pekka Taveri told Yahoo News. Western activities in the Arctic have been very mild. In March, however, NATO held an exercise called Cold Response in Norway with 35,000 fighters from 28 countries. It was NATO's biggest Arctic exercise in 30 years. Yet the alliance, unlike Russia, has no new plans for permanent forces or military bases in the region. It says, Taveri said, while acknowledging that more patrolling and more exercises have been given Russia reason to point the finger and claim the West is the problem. And this is one of those bases. Now this is Alexandra Land Island, and this is in Russia. And these are the types of bases that they're building up in the Arctic and reopening ones that they had, right? Going back to the Cold War, so on and so forth. They're reactivating. And we're going to read about what that reactivation really is. Western experts say that Russia, the largest of the 8 countries surrounding the Arctic, is behind the militarization of the mineral-rich region, which supplies 20% of Russia's GDP. For the past decade, the Kremlin, which is the Russian government, has been revamping shuttered Soviet bases, forming a necklace of dozens of defensive outposts, by some counts upwards of 50. So they got 50 outposts in this region, showing you how active they are. It says from the Barents Sea to territories near Alaska, and building new facilities like the ultra-modern Trefoil is northernmost base that became fully operational last year. And that fully operational means that they can fire nukes from there, right? Continuing on, it says the U.S. and NATO have looked on in consternation, meaning they're mad. It says, as Russia has established a new Arctic command and 4 new Arctic brigades, furbished airfields and deep water posts, keeps launching mock military attacks on Nordic countries in between, jamming GPS and radar during NATO exercises. It has also, according to the U.S. State Department, been trying out novel weapon systems in the Arctic. And those are those missiles. Those are the ICBMs. That's what they're trying out. Now, I'm going to go back to the map here. As we, continue on with the lesson, I want to put the map up so just to show the geography piece of this. Because this is geography and war. Geography, plays a key factor in any war. Anyone that has know anything about military tactics, TTPs, and operational plans, battle plans, know that geography is a big part of war. It's a big part of how you come up with strategy. Now, as I continue on, want to jump into the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, right, which is going into Gog and Magog, Russia. Now, many brothers have read this chapter, and I was going to read it from the top, but I'm going to just go to the point, right, from the top. Speaking of the land of Gog and Magog, which is the area known as Russia today, which is just, the scriptures speak about the Medes being in this land in the last days, as we're going to read the prophecy. Now in the land of Russia, as you see here today, the land of Gog and Magog, this is what would be said about the land of Gog and Magog. Let me go right to the point. Now it says, Ezekiel 38:8, going right to the point. When you read from 1 on down, it says, after many days thou shalt be visited. Speaking of Russia, the old USSR spirit that will be put back in Russia, to fulfill prophecy. So Russia kind of fell back going into the 80s, and then now they've come back roaring. The bear has come back, and the Most High has put the spirit on them. Once again, Proverbs 21:1, right? It says, in the latter days, or in the latter years, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, right? It says, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Verse 9, it says, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. So Gog and Magog is going to come like a storm, and he's going to have his allies with him as we continue to read. It says, thou shalt be like a cloud over the land, and that's speaking about them invading Babylon as we continue to read. It says, thou and all thy bands, all of those that are confederate with Russia, which, nations like Iran, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, China, India, just to name a few. A lot of the nations in Southwest Asia, which is the Arabian Peninsula, a lot of different nations in that region, in that area, more of those nations, like Saudi Arabia, which has some, form of allegiance to America, but many of these nations are going to turn on Babylon. So that's just to name a few. These are the nations that are confederate. It says, and all thy bands and many people with thee. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, it shall come to pass that at that same time shall things come into thy mind. And what's going to come into the mind, of the Medes, right? Of Russia. It says, and thou shalt think an evil thought. The evil thought is going to be to press the button, right? To shoot the nuclear missile. So they're going to invade this land. They're going to be like a cloud. They're going to come into this land. And then it says that they're going to invade this land. And then they're going to think an evil thought. And that's going to be the fire on Babylon. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, which is another name, a metaphor for America. And the reason why it's a metaphor, the land of unwalled villages, is because when you look at America, the states, all the 50 states, and including Hawaii, there's no borders around it. You can go from state to state relatively, very easily. Just through the highway system, you can go from one state, one coast to another, north to south, east to west, and nothing won't stop you, right? There's no natural borders. So it goes on to say, and thou shalt go to the land of unwalled villages, and I will go to them that are at rest. And that's America. They're at peace. They're at rest. The people here don't believe nothing's going to happen here. Like it says in Isaiah 47, that I sent as a widow, America don't believe that they're going to be touched, that any ill is going to come to this land. But not only is it going to be invaded, it's going to be destroyed, right? Continuing on, it says, I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls. Speaking of the states, right? Which is like the villages. Each state is like a village, in this land. And having neither bars nor gates. They don't have no protection. All they have is those two oceans. Well, really, you have the Atlantic on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, you have the Pacific. And on the southern border, you have the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico. But there's nothing protecting this land, as a whole. Continuing on, which is when we see why they want to build the wall and all that kind of nonsense, because this land don't have that protection. Now, continuing on, verse 12, it says, to take a spoil and to take a prey. So Babylon's going to become the spoil and the prey, to turn thine hand against the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations. So this is the melting pot. This is that place where all the people are gathered together out of the nations, which have gotten cattle. It says, and how do they get there? Through rape, robbery, and murder, right? The conquistadors coming and conquering nations, enslaving the children of Israel, and bringing Judah and Benjamin, Levi here to serve captivity, that dwell in the midst of the land. Now, let's go from here and touch on this in Isaiah the 30th chapter, or Isaiah the 13th chapter. So this is Isaiah 13, right? And I'm going to go right to the point. Isaiah 13. And let's go right to the point, verse 17. And this whole chapter, goes into, the destruction of Babylon and how it's going to happen, the ICBM, so on and so forth, and how the Lord is coming to punish the world for their evil. When you start here at verse 17 to get to the point, Isaiah 13 in verse 17, it says, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them. Now, stirring up, once again, goes back to putting the hooks in the jaws. That stir up and to put the hooks in jaws, once again, going into that word stir up, it's the same thing. To put the hooks in the jaws, to bring them back, is stirring them up. And that word stir up, in the verse goes into rouse, to awaken, to be excited, which goes into really being inspired. The Lord is inspiring these nations to come together to fight in the battle of Armageddon, in the battle of Armageddon. He's putting the spirit on these nations to fight. As it says in Joel, the 3rd chapter, let the weak say I'm strong. Isaiah 13 and 17, behold, I will stir up. So the Lord is rousing. He's exciting, Gog and Magog, and all the nations is going to join them to fulfill prophecy. It says, stir up the Medes against them, speaking against Babylon, which is the subject matter of this whole chapter, Isaiah the 13th chapter, which shall not regard silver. It says, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. So there won't be no bribes that's going to be given, to stop the Medes from doing what they're doing and thinking that evil thought, ultimately. Isaiah 13 and 18, their bows, right? These are their weapons, their bows, and those bows has those missiles, those ICBMs. Now, these are their weapons, and ultimately it's going to be those nukes. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, speaking of the armies, of America and all of those that are allied with America. And they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare, showing you they're going to invade this land. Let's continue to read. In Babylon, it says, the glory of kingdoms, which is America, the glory of kingdoms, the highest mountain, the highest government, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So this land is going to be like when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, which was by fire. So it's going to be that nuclear fire that's going to actually destroy this place, Now let's show that further. So what's going to destroy this place is that nuclear fire. So it's going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah when it was destroyed back in the ancient world. Now, as we continue on, let's get into Isaiah the 14th chapter. I just want to hit a few quick precepts to the Spirit, Lord willing, is edifying. This is Isaiah 14, and I'm going to start at verse 5, just showing you the geography, which is the landmass here as we see. Once again, Finland and Sweden, becoming part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the B system. Now it's causing Russia to continue to be more and more aggressive, which is the Lord pushing these nations to fulfill prophecy once again. So now, matter of fact, before I get that, let me show this real quick. This is 2 Ezra 15. Now, I quoted Joel, the 3rd chapter, and there's plenty of chapters, but here's another chapter that goes into, the gathering of the nations, what we see going on day in and day out with World War III. This is 2 Ezra 15 and 20, real quick. Behold, saith the Most High, I will call together all the kings of the earth. So the Lord is doing that by what? By doing what? By mobilizing Russia, by stirring up the Medes, putting the hooks back in their jaws. To reverence me, it says, which are from the rising of the sun, from the south, from the east, and Libanus, which is Lebanon, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done to them. And who's the them? The children of Israel, when you read in Psalm the 83rd chapter. Verse 21. And also and I quoted it again, Joel the 3rd chapter. Verse 21. Like as they do yet this day unto my chosen, the chosen, speaking of the elect, so will I do also, and recompense in their bosom. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh. So the Lord Yahweh is repaying the nations by having them gather together, calling all the nations together. Zephaniah 3 and 8 as well. Which it tells you that Zephaniah 3 and 8. Let me just get it real quick. This is also how the Lord is calling the nations. It's another precept through the Spirit. So Zephaniah 3 and verse 8. Salakia. Zephaniah 3 and verse 8. And it reads, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord. The Lord is commanding us to wait, to be patient, to suffer, saith the Lord Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. That's him gathering the nations, we read in 2 Ezra 15 and 20. It says, for my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms. The same thing is said in 2 Ezra 15. He said, the Lord is gathering the nations and assembling the kingdoms to fight. It says, to pour upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. So the earth is about to be destroyed, by Salakia. Babylon's about to be destroyed in various parts of the earth. The whole earth is not going to be destroyed, because the scriptures say that the earth abideth forever in the book of Ecclesiastes. But various parts of the earth in Babylon is going to be completely destroyed, and the land of Israel is going to be completely annihilated as well, right? And that land is going to have to be replenished. Now, Babylon is not going to be inhabited no more. So when we go back to Isaiah 14 in verse 5, and it reads, the Lord Yahweh have broken the staff of the wicked. So the support system of Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, which is being destroyed, economically, morally, ethically, spiritually, but its system of governance, most importantly, is fallen. Its economic system. It says the Lord's broken the staff of the wicked. So, his support system is being destroyed. It says the same thing in Isaiah the 31st chapter when you read the first 3 verses. It says, and the scepter of the rulers, the scepter, goes into, an actual rod that's symbolic of rulers, a king, right? A scepter. So that scepter is symbolic of like authority and like rulership. A king would have this. So the scepters of the rulers, starting with Babylon and the nations that, are conjoined unto it. Verse 6, speaking of Babylon, he who smote the people with wrath with a continual stroke, which is how he's ruled. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindereth. Verse 7, the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. This will be when this devil's put down. Yea, the fir trees, the trees are symbolic to nations, right, and people. Rejoice at thee, the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. A feller is a lumberjack. Esau is that lumberjack, that feller that's destroyed all the trees, right? This is speaking metaphorically. Destroyed the nations. He's also destroyed nature as well. Verse 9, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee. See, the dead was speaking of these nations, right? The weak is saying that they're strong. Gog and Magog, China and all the other nations that's coming against Babylon, right? India, so on and so forth. Iran, Syria. It says, it stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth, all of the mighty men, right? The Lord's calling all the mighty men, all the nations, all those that have the bow that's going to shoot the missile. It have raised up their thrones, all the kings of the nations. That's why the Lord's calling the nations together, right? Verse 10, all they that speak and say unto thee, art thou also become as weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? The scriptures say that Babylon, that Babylon has been cut asunder, right? So the power of Babylon, they've lost their power. Verse 11, thy pomp, which is the pride, is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. This is showing that Babylon is going to be brought to death, brought to the grave, because when you're in the grave, you decompose. That's what's the reference to the worms, right? So this place is about to be destroyed. They're about to lose rulership, and they're about to go to hell, which is to the grave, which is lose rulership, lose power, lose dominion over the earth. So that's what we're witnessing and what we're seeing with the geography and war. World War III is moving fast and furious. So with that, I hope that was edifying to the hopeful elect. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakakwadash, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Peace, love, blessings, and salutations, as always, to the elect, to the hopeful elect. Habayath Madawadah. The brothers is out, the house of David, laboring day in and day out, and to the Akim and Akwath, who listen, the Akyah wa Akwath Yah, who believe and listen to the glorious gospel of Yahweh Shabbat Yahushua being preached on the four quarters of the earth. Unto you, I say shalom. So shalom to the hopeful elect.